Hey beautiful people, what is up and welcome back to my channel. I am Jamila and I love all things beauty. I love all things makeup, I love all things skincare, and I especially love sharing my tips and tricks for how to find high-end and luxury beauty products at bargain prices. Yes, we do. If that sounds like something that you are interested in, I would love if you would consider subscribing and joining the family. Okay, so I'm back today with my third and final video in my Glamlite series, and I will be doing my first impressions on the Glamlite Wine palette. So like with the other palettes, it does come in the purple wine container. And this is what the actual palette looks like. You have all of the product details in the back, including the fact that it was made in China. It has an 18-month shelf life. Like all of the others, this is a $35 palette, but if you buy the bundle, you can get it for cheaper. When you open up the palette, here is the color story. It is really beautiful. I love purple eyeshadow. Did I need another purple palette? Honestly, no. But I love purple eyeshadow. I do think that this is also a really beautiful, cohesive story. I like that you get purples, you get some blues. The one thing that I thought was a little bit out of place is this gold here, because I think that that could have been better replaced with like a silver shimmer instead of the gold. But this is what we have, so let's just dive into it. I'm gonna give you guys some live swatches and then I'm gonna do 2 eye looks using the palette. Okay, so for the swatches, we're just gonna go row by row by row. These feel way more powdery than the last 2 palettes. So here we have the first 4 shades: Aroma, Napa, Malbec, and Fine Taste. That is not giving me what the last 2 palettes gave. We're just gonna keep going. Here we have the next 4 shades. So we have Sparkling, Earthy, Pinot Noir, Concord Grape. Here we have the next 4 shades: Magnesium, Cabernet Sauvignon, Chardonnay, and Fruity. And here we have the last 3 shades: Pour It Up, Merlot, and Vintage. Okay, here are all of the shades in the Glamlite Wine palette. Now, this shade here, Napa, is a duochrome, so it does have a purple-pink shift. So now swatching these shades while I wipe this off, I will say that they feel very different from the Chocolate Martini and the Dirty Martini palette. The mattes in here feel way more powdery and just not as creamy as the other 2 palettes. Even the shimmers feel significantly less creamier, and everything just kind of like fell apart when I dipped my finger into it to do these swatches. Like, there is just eyeshadow everywhere. So swatches aren't everything, so we'll have to see how this actually applies on the eyes, but I am disappointed in how this swatched because of what I experienced with the other 2 palettes. So let's see how this goes. So first up, I'm going to go into the shade Earthy, and I'm going to use that as my transition color. This is a beautiful lavender shade that does lean a little bit on the pink side. It's time to start all over and go for it. And there's quite a bit of kick up in the pan when I'm dipping my brush into this shade. Next, using that same brush, I'm gonna go into the shade Pinot Noir and buff that into the crease as well. Pinot Noir is actually my favorite kind of red wine. I love wine just generally. I really wanted this palette specifically because wine is probably my favorite thing. Like, I like a good cocktail, but you can't go wrong with a glass of wine. and I prefer reds over whites, and my preferred red is a Pinot Noir. If not, I'll always go for a good Cabernet. Next, I'm taking a smaller blender brush and I'm gonna go into this deep purple shade called Vintage, and I'm gonna use that to deepen up the outer V a little bit.
Dreams, baby. What can I do when a million things are running through? Million things I can't undo. I just sleepwalk, I just sleep talk.
That is a really rich, beautiful purple, and it blends so nicely. All of these mattes in every single palette that I have used blends like a dream. Okay, so I'm gonna leave the look like this for now, and then I'm gonna dive into shimmers. What I actually want to try to do with this look is to give myself a bit of a halo eye using this shade here, Fruity, and also using this pink shade here, Sparkling. So I'm gonna put Fruity into sort of the outer third and the inner third of the eye, and then I'm gonna put Sparkling in the middle. Now, what I found with Glamlite shadows is that they don't apply particularly well with a brush. So I am picking up that shade with my finger, and I'm gonna do my best to tap that into the inner and sort of outer part of the eye, and then we will use a brush to clean up those areas that I can't really apply that well with a finger.
What can I do when a million things are running through? Million things I can't undo. I just sleepwalk, I just sleep talk. That's all I got. What can I say with a million things I can't erase?
Okay, so that's not picking up very well with my finger, so I am switching to a brush to apply that shade. And what I noticed when I dipped my finger into that is that it definitely was not as creamy as the other shimmers that I've used from the Chocolate Martini and the Dirty Martini palettes. Yeah, this is definitely a more dry shade. And because I'm using a brush, I am experiencing some fallout on my nose from that shade. So I'm just gonna take a powder brush and just dust that off. And then I'm gonna go back over that with my foundation sponge because, yeah, there are like purple flecks there. Huh. So far, this is looking like my least favorite palette. Okay, I'm gonna have to go back in with a little bit of foundation or concealer to clean that up a bit. But just to finish off the eye look, I'm going to go into the shade Sparkling, taking that up with my finger, and I'm gonna tap that into the center of the lid.
What can I say with a million things I can't erase? Million people I can't save. I just sleepwalk, I just sleep talk. Don't wanna wake up.
And then taking the brush that I used for that purple shimmer, I'm just gonna run that over both shimmers just to blend the top of that together. And then taking my first brush, I'm gonna go back into the second shade that I used, Pinot Noir, and I'm gonna lightly dust that over the top as well to bring back some of that pink that was lost when I applied the shimmers.
Only lavender dreams, baby.
Then I'm gonna go back into the Vintage shade, which was the deep purple shade, and add that again to the outer V to bring a little bit more of that color back. Some of that was also lost. And you guys know the drill. Once you get to this part of the look, you can go back and forth with the shades that you used before as many times as you need to get the right pigmentation, to get the right amount of color and the right blend. So I will oftentimes continuously switch brushes and add and blend and add, but I edit all of that out. Otherwise the video would be forever long. But I'm gonna go back into the first shimmer and tap a little bit of that into the outer part to bring some of that back, because I do think I lost a little bit of that. Okay, I am loving how this halo eye is looking. Next, I'm gonna go into the waterline, taking that same vintage purple shade on the brush that I used for the lid. Actually, let me clean that off a bit because there is some shimmer in there. So I'm gonna quickly clean that off. Then I'm gonna go back into the vintage shade and I'm gonna put that in the outer half of the eye. Now, I don't know if you guys can tell, but there is some pretty significant fallout from this palette. I did not experience fallout in the chocolate martini or the dirty martini palette, so I was not expecting this. And lastly, taking another small brush, I'm gonna go into the Pinot Noir shade and I'm gonna put that into the inner half of the waterline. It's time to start all over. Okay, so this is what the eyes are looking like right now. I'm gonna go clean up my face because there is a ton of fallout under both eyes. I'm gonna add some liner, add some mascara, and then I'll be back to show you guys the final look. Okay, I'm back and this is look number 1. So I had to, you know, throw on my little purple headband, add some earrings. For my lips, I am actually wearing the Christian Audette lipstick in the shade Merlot. This was a part of the Glam Girl Chelsea collab and one of the 3 lipsticks that she had. Absolutely love that collab. Love all 3 lipsticks that she picked, and that is a perfect shade. So let me just come in a little bit closer so you guys can see this look. Don't wanna wake up. So there you have it. That is look number 1 with the Glamlite wine palette. So let's dive into look number 2. Okay, so for the second look, I'm gonna go into the shade Aroma first and use that as my first transition shade. She say she ain't got nobody. I said, baby girl, you're right. This is applying a little patchy. She say she ain't got no purpose. I say what you on. These are not the Glamlite shadows that I used in the last 2 palettes. I can say that because this is a little patchy and very powdery. There's a lot of kick up. This is taking a lot longer to blend than the other 2 palettes that I used. One of the things that I really appreciated about the shadows when I started using them is that they blend easily, like blend like a dream. So I don't know what happened. I mean, I do understand, or at least from having watched a lot of YouTube videos and been on YouTube for a while, a lot of people have said that purple eyeshadows are harder to formulate than some others, so I'm gonna chalk it up to that this was a little hard to make. But damn, I mean, it's not bad. Let me stop being so dramatic. It's not bad, it's just not as good as the other 2 palettes. Next, I'm gonna go into the shade Pour It Up and use that to deepen up the crease a tiny bit. I'm gonna start by putting that in the outer part of the crease and then blending that in because I don't want it to go all the way through. Over, under, through her, none of that at all. She needs to be knocked down. Now with this palette, what I'm having to do is to slightly dip my brush in, tap off the excess because there is a lot of kick up in the pan with these shades, so just bear that in mind as you guys are using this palette. You will have some kick up. But here you can see how that it looks pink, so but it is purple. It's like a purple pink, how it blends in really nicely with the first purple shade. Now I'm gonna just do that on this side. Next, I'm gonna take the shade Merlot. It's that deep wine red shade, and I'm gonna put that in the outer V. And now that I think about it, like most wine is red, like deep red. not purple, unless you're getting like a white wine. And there's a lot of purple shades in here, and only this one reddish purple.
Foggy glasses, all this emotion. Tried to tell her, but she probably didn't notice. She say she ain't got nobody. I said, baby girl, you're wrong. She say she ain't got no.
And then the last thing that I'm going to do is I'm going to use my finger and go into the Napa Shimmer shade. That's the duochrome that I showed you guys. And I'm going to tap that over the entire, like, 2/3 of the lid. Now, you guys saw from my first look and from the first 2 palettes that I tried that I've been going in with my fingers for these shadows because they're so creamy. The shimmers in here are hella dry compared to the shimmers in the other 2 palettes. I'm still gonna go in with my finger, but it's definitely a dry shimmer formula in this one compared to the Chocolate Martini and Dirty Martini. So I picked up some of Napa on my finger here, and then I'm just gonna start by tapping that into the center of the lid and then working my way out. And then I'll go in with a brush after and clean it up. This Napa shade is a beautiful duochrome, but it doesn't have a lot of base pigment to it. It definitely could be more of a topper shade than an actual, like, just shimmer by itself.
You to that place with a blueberry patch up, pack your J, roll it fast. Know your worries away.
And then, like I said, taking a small Morphe brush. This one doesn't have a number on it. I'm just gonna clean up the edges. There is a little bit of fallout on my face here, but honestly, it's barely noticeable.
Over, under, through, none of that at all.
And you guys already know how I like to do it. I'm gonna go back in with all 3 of the matte shades that I used before just to blend everything together and make sure some of those matte pigments don't get lost in the look because we put some shimmer over it. So I'm gonna take a little bit of Pinot Noir first, which is the pinky purple shade, the second matte that I used. And I'm just gonna tap that into the crease and blend. Just blend that together. Just the tiniest bit. Then going back into the first shade, Aroma, which is that almost lavender purple. Putting that into the very, very top part right here. Just to make sure that the purple does not get lost. This is taking a little bit more blending because this Aroma shade is quite patchy.
Foggy glasses, all this emotion. Tried to tell her, but she probably didn't notice. She said.
Then lastly, going into Merlot, which is that deep wine red. Just gonna clean up the outer part here a little bit. Okay, I'm actually liking how this is looking. I'm just gonna dust off some of that fallout. Then for the waterline, I'm gonna take my Morphe M152 brush. I'm gonna go into the Merlot shade, the red shade, and I'm going to sweep that into the outer half of the eye. Again, concentrating most of that pigment at the very end and diffusing it out. Then I'm going to clean off that brush and go into the shade Concord Grape. It's this really rich purple shimmer, and I'm going to put that into the inner third of that waterline. Okay, eyes are looking pretty good. Let me go add some liner, some mascara, finish up the rest of my face, and I'll be back to give you guys my final thoughts and show you the final look. Okay guys, I'm back and this is the final look. For the lips, I'm wearing the ColourPop Tonight We Fly. It's a lip cream from the Hocus Pocus collection. Don't know how I feel about it. It is very creamy on the lips, but it took like 4 layers to get this opaque. And even now, I don't think I like it. But That's what I get for, you know. That was my own choice for shopping at ColourPop. Oh my Jesus. Hold, please. I'm airing back on. Now, I did want to also flag that for my face, I went into the Davina Cosmetics. Davina? The Danessa Myricks. The Danessa Myricks Lightwork 3 palette to use the holographic powders. I actually ended up mixing Strawberry Moon and Blue Moon together. This has a blue flip, this has a pink flip, and I ended up creating this like really blue, pink, purple highlighter, which I'm actually really enjoying. I also did put that into my brow bone as my brow bone highlight. Anyways, you already know the deal. Let me come in a little bit closer so you guys can get a close-up of this look, and then I'll give you guys my final thoughts on the wine palette itself, but I'll also give you my thoughts on the collection overall, or at least the 3 palettes from the collection that I picked up. Okay, so let's talk about the wine palette. I was disappointed. I was really excited for this because I really do enjoy purple eyeshadow. I have a number of purple palettes in my collection, like the ABH Novena Volume 5, which I really enjoy. And I thought I was going to enjoy this. Like, the colors are really, really beautiful. Now, compared to the other palettes, I do feel like we have more mattes in this palette than the other ones. And I didn't like the formula. It's not that I don't like the color story. The formula just didn't agree with me. The mattes here, super powdery. And powdery to the point where when you dip your brush and you get a ton of kick up, a ton of fallout. So you have to like tap your brush off and then blend the eyeshadows in. Now, you guys saw when I did the second look, this Aroma shade, when I was trying to blend that, it was extremely patchy. Now, I didn't do anything different in terms of primer. I used my e.l.f. Camo Concealer Primer, which is what I pretty much been using for all of the Glamlite palettes that I worked with. So I don't know why, but this was patchy on my eyelids, and I felt like I spent way more time blending these mattes than I did with the other 2 palettes that I had. As for the shimmers, they were also quite disappointing. One of the things that I've talked to you guys about when it comes to the Glamlite shimmers is that they are creamy. They're so creamy, they're so buttery. One, it's hard to use it with a brush and you have to dip your finger in. But once you put it on the lid, regardless of the fact that you can't use a brush with it, it just looks stunning. These shimmers, dry. Dry as hell. When I was applying this, both with the first look and the second look, I got a lot of fallout because they were so dry. And I typically will like set my primers. They had nothing to stick to. So if you are planning to use the shimmers in this, I would say that you want a more tacky base so that they stick to your eyelids, or use a glitter glue. But overall, the shimmers I found were really dry. The creamiest one is the shade Chardonnay, but I didn't even really use that in my eye looks. I did use it in the inner corner as an inner corner highlight, but that's pretty much it. So overall, not my favorite palette. Didn't quite enjoy this. Felt like I had to work a little bit harder than I expected, considering what I experienced with the other 2 palettes. Is it a bad palette? No, I think... Let me see. Let me think about this. It's $35. The shadows are meh. I wouldn't recommend that you pick up the wine palette. I think you can get a nicer purple palette. I honestly would probably recommend the ABH Novena 5 palette instead. So I wouldn't recommend the purple one. But let me just rank this for you guys and give you guys my overall thoughts. So coming in third will be the wine palette. As you guys saw and heard, I was not impressed with the formula, and I think that this performed the worst out of all 3. Don't get me wrong, I think both looks are beautiful. I think you can get really pretty looks with this, but I think that this performed the worst. And I think also in terms of versatility, you're really only gonna get 3, maybe 4 looks. Like, it is a purple palette. There are some flips of blue in there, and there's some pink that you can work with, but at the end of the day, I don't think that you're gonna get very much different looks. There is one other look that I created with this palette. I didn't film it, but I will insert a picture for you guys here. I posted it on my Instagram. So yeah, I don't think you're gonna get as much versatility with this. Coming in second is the Dirty Martini palette. This is the green palette. This is the one that caught my eye and got me really excited for the brand. The formula in here, impeccable, absolutely great, absolutely beautiful. And unlike the wine palette, I do think that while this is a green palette, it is versatile. So you will get those green looks, but I do think that you can also get a little bit of like blue-green looks, and also you can get some copper bronzy looks as well because those shades are included. So while this is a palette that I said could have been a 9-pan, with this larger palette, you do get more versatility. This definitely could have and should have been a 9-pan purple palette because we didn't need all of these shades. So this comes in at number 2. And coming in at number 1, which is quite shocking because this is the palette that I was least excited for because it's a neutral palette. It is the Chocolate Martini palette. Like, baby, let me tell you. I was like, I'm not very excited for this. I have a neutral palette. A neutral palette is a neutral palette. But this is so beautiful. And while this is a neutral palette, there's so much versatility. This purplish shade here really does help you add a lot of color to looks instead of getting just like a really nice brown. And even though we have a ton of like these brownish mattes, they all look different on the eye. So it doesn't feel repetitive. The depth in this palette is perfect if you are someone of my complexion or deeper, which I appreciate. All of these mattes I can use. A lot of times neutral palettes will have some very, very light ashy mattes, but every single one of these mattes work for me, and I am so very happy about that. This orange shade here, do you know how hard it is to find an orange like that? Listen. And that purple shade Happy Hour that I showed you guys, these two shades together, I'm just saying, great combination. So this definitely has to be my number 1 palette, and the palette that I would recommend the most. Even if you do have a large neutral collection, I do think that this is quite a unique palette, and one that I have definitely been drawn to reaching for because I think that you get a lot of different shades in this. It's not just, it can be an everyday palette where if you just want a basic neutral look, you can get that. But it is also a palette where you can amp it up and get a little bit more glam, a little bit bolder of a look. So that's it. Overall, I am very happy with my intro to the Glamlite formula. I actually did pick up another Glamlite palette because after trying these two, I was like, what? Let me pick up another one. And I will definitely be keeping an eye out on the brand. I don't think I will ever pick up any of the food shaped palettes. One, because they're too hard to store, and actually it doesn't fit my vibe, my aesthetic, and I don't want to put something that's food shaped on my face. It just doesn't sit right with me and make me feel good. So I don't think I'll ever pick up some of the food shaped palettes, and I also don't even like the color story in them that much. But if they keep creating more of these square palettes that come in really cool packaging that I can get rid of, I'm okay with that. All right, so that ends my Glamlite series. I hope you guys enjoyed it. I hope you guys enjoyed this video. If you did, I would really love and appreciate it if you would consider supporting my channel by subscribing. So click that red button. And I would love if you would give this video a big thumbs up, like the video, leave a comment down below. And if you really, really like the video, share with a friend. Let them know that you're enjoying my content and this is a channel that they should consider subscribing to. And that's it from me, guys, on this video. As always, I love you guys, and I will catch you in my next one. Bye.